Hi, I'm Professor Angus Kress Gillespie from the American Studies Department at Rutgers University, and I'm here with Spook Handy of New Brunswick, New Jersey, who's often been called the best folk artist you've never heard of. Joining Spook is James Malchow, a senior at Rutgers University. Our two guests are here today to share with us their memories of Pete Seeger, who passed away on January 27th, 2014. As most people know, Pete Seeger was an American folk singer and activist. A fixture on nationwide radio in the 1940s, he also had a string of records during the early 1950s as a member of the Weavers, most notably their recording of Leadbelly's Goodnight Irene, which topped the charts for 13 weeks in 1950. Members of the Weavers were blacklisted during the McCarthy era, but in the 1960s, he reemerged on the public scene as a prominent singer of protest music in support of international disarmament, civil rights, counterculture, and environmental causes. It's my pleasure to welcome Spook Handy and James Malchow to our studio today. Spook, tell us, how did you first get to know Pete Seeger?
Oh my goodness. Well, you know, I grew up not really knowing who Pete Seeger was.
Okay.
And in 2003, there was a lot of protests going on because of the impending war against Iraq.
I remember, yeah.
Yep, and I got involved in some anti-war peace concerts. And a woman named Charlene Leahy, who ran the Somerset Voices for Peace, said to me, "You should send your music off to Pete Seeger." Now, ironically, not knowing who Pete was or much about him, I've been hearing that for 20 years. And I said, you know what? You send it off to Pete Seeger. You know, I actually asked her to do it as a favor, and she did. And
which was nice of her.
It was very nice of her. And I was kind of surprised that a couple weeks later, or a month or two later, I got a postcard in the mail from Pete. Actually, first thing I got was a letter, and it was the lyrics to my song "Vote," with red ink through some of the words and suggestions for revisions. And then I got a postcard from him inviting me to join him at the Pumpkin Festival up in Beacon, New York in October of 2003.
Huh. And so then you bonded with him, he became kind of a mentor.
Well, yeah, I mean, what happened was I got to the festival, didn't even know what he looked like, and I asked somebody, I said, can you point out Pete Seeger? And he said, yeah, he's right over there. He was about 10 feet away from me. And I went up to him and I extended my hand and I said, "Hi, I'm Spook Handy." And you would think that he would extend his hand and say, "Hi, I'm Pete Seeger," but instead he put his hands in his pocket and he stooped down about an inch, looked me right in the eye, and he said, "Do you know what founder's disease is?" Now, I do know what founder's disease is, but I said, "You tell me." And he said, "Founder's disease is when the same people who started an organization 30 years ago are still running it today." That was his introduction. That's how we got introduced. Huh. Yeah, and I thought that was a little unusual, but as I got to know him better over the years, I realized that this made perfect sense.
Was he talking about Clearwater?
Well, you know, he might have specifically been talking about the Beacon Sloop Club, which is a chapter of the Clearwater organization. But I think he's talking about, you know, everything in general. You know, just a real quick hello to you. It's like you're one of the guys who's at Rutgers University who's doing a valiant job of combating founder's disease.
Yeah.
Because you always have younger people coming in, taking over the New Jersey Folk Festival every year, like James over here. Yeah. You know, and all that stuff. It's
Well, let me turn it around. James, how did you get to know Pete Seeger?
It was the similar thing. It was at the Beacon Sloop Club. I was there for a meeting, and I had been there early, and sure enough, one of the first person to show up to open the door was January, and the clubhouse is heated with wood. So Pete had shown up to get the fires going in the fireplace and the wood stove, and I was there waiting.
How long had you been a member of the club?
I was first time.
Really?
First time
the
I had
very
been there.
first time?
Yeah. And
how old were you at the time?
18.
Oh, okay.
I'm still in high school. And he goes, "I need your help." I said, "Okay." And we set the fires together. and he was telling me about the club, and then there was this huge picture that somebody had donated, and he had help. I was holding it up while he was hanging it, and so it's the same sort of thing. Always immediately ready to have people participate, no matter how new they are.
Huh.
And I think that's one of the things that really drew people to him.
So it's fair to say he was approachable.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Spook, since his death in January of 2014, there's been any number of memorials and concerts and observances. How do you account for this emotional outpouring?
Pete, you know, this happens with a lot of great people. I've heard the same thing said about St. Francis. Everybody wants to claim him, and rightfully so. You know, it's like Pete was involved in this, Pete was involved in that. Or environmental organizations. I'm actually doing a tribute concert on his birthday in Silver Springs, Maryland, at the Rachel Carson House. Rachel Carson House was the environmentalist who wrote Silent Spring. And almost everywhere I go, somebody comes up to me and tells me, we were personal friends with Pete. You know, we ate dinner at his house. He was just so personable, and I think it's because he had such a love for humanity. That's what came first.
Well, we've been talking about Pete, but he was mainly a singer and a songwriter. Let's do one of his songs, perhaps Quite Early Morning.
Okay, I'll let you get away with saying he was mainly a singer and a songwriter. He was so much more than that, and that's reflected in his songs too.
Yeah.
Don't you know it's darkest before the dawn? It's this thought keeps me moving on. If we could heed these early warnings, the time is now, quite early morning. If we could heed these early warnings, the time is now, quite early morning. Some say that humankind won't long endure, but what makes them feel so doggone sure? I know that you who hear my singing can make those freedom bells go ringing. I know that you who hear my singing can make those freedom bells go ringing. And so we keep on while we live, until we have no more to give. And when these fingers can strum no longer, hand the old banjo to young ones stronger. And when these fingers can strum no longer, hand the old banjo to young ones stronger. Let's play this together. Don't you know it's darkest before the dawn? And this thought keeps me moving on through all this world of joy and sorrow. We still can have singing tomorrows through all this world of joy and sorrow. We still can have singing tomorrow.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's really nice.
It's a beautiful song. It's a wonderful song. Wonderful, wonderful song.
James, I want to toss it over to you. What made his live performances so outstanding? What was it about them?
I think a couple of things. One thing is Pete always wanted participation from the audience in the music.
Yeah.
And he had an incredible ability to get people singing.
Yeah, I see pictures of him with his hand over his
Right,
ear.
or you see his arm out, sort of
he invites
asking people to bring up their voices.
Which is kind of like from the Black Church, call and response.
Well, you know, that was one of his musical influences, for learning how to get large crowds of people really into what he was doing. But I think another thing is there was almost like a deceptive part of his voice. It sounded so familiar, but he had this incredible power and range also. He could sing lower than a lot of baritones and bass, and he could sing very high tenor. And so even though it sounded like something you were comfortable singing along with, it was he really had a phenomenal voice also.
He had a way of sounding like the guy down the street, and yet still being one of the most amazing singers in the world.
Yeah. It sounded sort of unpolished almost.
Raw, natural, unadulterated.
Spook, can you talk just a little bit about his activism, say labor unions, the peace movement, how that motivated him?
Well, you know, he was involved in any worthy cause that you could think of, but I always felt, or have come to feel that his activism, Pete was an activist. He couldn't help being an activist. He was an activist more so because he followed the love in his heart for humanity. And this is when, and this is why his activism transcended the political partisanship of things. You know, he's one of these guys that he somehow discovered that if you want people to be environmentalists, you don't approach it from a political viewpoint. You approach it by taking people on a boat out into the Hudson River and experiencing the environment firsthand.
What about labor unions?
Labor unions, you know, I'm not an expert on that, but I think he started out palling around with Woody Guthrie, and Woody was very big on labor unions, and he always believed in the dignity of all people, you know, including workers. Yeah,
and over to James, peace movement. How was he involved with that?
Well, it's funny. His peace activism goes back to World War II when they were before the United States entered the war. They were singing songs to Franklin Roosevelt, calling for the U.S. to stay out of it. But his father also was a left-winger, which was part of where he got his connection to unions, and also had been a peace activist during the First World War. And it continued, perhaps most publicly during Vietnam, where he was always out there singing to crowds. You see famous footage of the moratorium against the war in 1969, I think, with 100,000, 500,000 people in Washington, D.C. singing "Give Peace a Chance." That was Pete leading them there.
Wow.
And continued to the recent wars, too.
Yeah. And Spook, he collected songs from all over the world. What was behind that impulse?
He had a love for diversity. When he was a young kid, he traveled around with his folks. They were song catchers, you know, also known as ethnomusicologists, and they would go to the Appalachian Mountains and the Delta region and out into the Oklahoma area and you know, discover all these different styles of music. And he realized that there was a wide diversity of songs in America alone, and then beyond that, it spread to the rest of the Americas and the rest of the world. Diversity, he just loved it.
I think James, also when he visited countries, he liked hearing the music that came from there. And then when he would perform there, he would sing those songs to the people. You know, he sang songs from Czech Republic and South Africa and India, China, Russia, Germany.
Wow.
All these countries. And I think it helped connect him to audiences where they didn't speak the same language. It was a way of bridging that gap. But then he came back and he would sing those here to really expose his audiences to more world music that he thought was beautiful.
That's a great point, James, because it illustrates his us, not, you know, that we're all in here together. It's not us and them. It's all of us together. And so he would go to, you know, I saw a video of him. He went to Australia, did a concert there, and he said, "Well, I just learned this song. It's one of the songs that they sing here in Australia," and and it breaks down those barriers of being, you know, different.
Yeah. And James, He contributed to so many causes, but not just with singing. How else did he contribute?
Oh, it's almost like I was saying before with the Beacon Sloop Club. It wasn't just that he was supporting it in just his words or by affiliation. He and his whole family really rolled up their sleeves and did a lot of work.
Like making the fire?
Like making the fires. In the Beacon Sloop Club, Pete was the head of the building committee for a long time. He built us a fireplace and a chimney and helped expand the building, pour the concrete floors, everything. So they didn't just say they stood for things. They really took part.
Yeah. And Spook, what was his personality like once he's out of the spotlight?
Well, Pete, to me, was a complex and yet simple personality. He's a very reserved individual, as far as I know. He was reserved. He had the fascination of a child. He was fascinated about Native American Indians. He was fascinated about different types of trees and wood and animals. And this is what we would talk about. Or we would talk about early hominids or the formation of the galaxy or something like that. And that was right up my alley, music theory or something like that. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I bonded so much with him, is because here's another guy. He's 50 years older than me, and he's singing. He's interested in the same stuff you can't find people your own age who are interested in.
I want to add to that. I brought some things. He, like Spook was saying, he was enthusiastic about so much more than just music and activism and things. That he would want to. He'd get an idea of this is something wonderful, and he wanted to share it with some. So I brought some things. The Beacon Sloop Club has a strawberry festival, so they printed up a recipe sheet. His thinking is everybody should have these, be able to experience how wonderful these strawberry shortcakes are.
Yeah.
Or he likes the Gettysburg. This was from last year. He goes, I wrote up a way to help people memorize the Gettysburg Address that makes it easier. You start off each phrase with either it, the, or that. And so he goes, he'd bring this to his performances and hand it out to people who thought they might like to learn it. And he'd made videos to show people how to make steel drums out of 55-gallon drums, and wrapping paper at Christmas time out of their newspapers. And he made sheets like this for how to build dugout canoes in the style of Native Americans. So it was an amazing mix of things that he was really enthusiastic about. And like Spook said, he would love talking about it with anybody.
Huh.
Yeah, and I think this is a major part of his genius, was that he found a way of taking the things that he cared about, the things that he loved, and incorporating them into everything that he did, whether it be physical labor or songs that he was writing or the way he was sharing the music in a performance.
So
it's almost like omnivorous curiosity about the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yes.
I think you would laugh at hearing.
And he had, more about the Gettysburg Address, which of course in 2013 was the 150-year anniversary. Anniversary. He came to the Strawberry Festival. I guess it was Strawberry Festival, and it might have been
It was probably making shortcakes.
or it could have been the Pumpkin Festival in October, but with I think about 200 copies of his hand. He had handwritten it, as James showed us, and he handed it out to the audience, and he had us all reciting the Gettysburg Address.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, I'll be darned too. It's a great song.
And at the Clearwater Festival in June, it was middle of when the cicadas were out. He asked everybody in the audience to go at their highest point, and see 20,000 people making this noise, and it sounded like the cicadas all at once.
Well, let's do another song.
Okay.
Say Banks of Marble.
You want to do Banks of Marble? Sure. Banks of Marble. Well, this is another good thing to illustrate about Pete, because what we're going to do here is we're going to sing. This is a song that Pete and the Weavers recorded in 1950, and we are going to sing a couple of the older verses. And one of the things about Founder's Disease is Pete said it's not just that the older folks have to make room for the younger folks. This is true, especially the older folks in power. They're afraid to give up some of that space. But the younger folks learn the old songs, learn the old ways, learn what worked and learn what didn't, and then write new words to keep them up to date. Write new verses to reflect the issues of today, and write new songs that everybody can sing. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start off with some of the older verses and sing some of the newer ones.
Also, it's not a song that he wrote. it was very common for him to hear other people's songs like he did with Spook and so many other people and say, that's a wonderful song, and he'd expose that to large audiences.
Yeah.
So.
So you want to sing the first verse?
I've traveled round this country from shore to shining shore. It really made me wonder the things I heard and saw. I saw the weary farmer plowing sodden loam. I heard the auction hammer knocking down his home. But the banks are made of marble with a guard at every door, and the vaults are stuffed with silver that the farmer sweated for.
Now here's one of the newer verses. I saw the bright-eyed student study deep into the night, and I heard the bankers whisper, now you owe me half your life. But the banks are made of marble with a guard at every door, and the vaults are stuffed with silver that the students sweated for. I saw the weary miner scrubbing coal dust off his back. I heard his children crying, got no coal to heat the shack. But the banks are made of marble with a guard at every door, and the vaults are stuffed with silver that the miners sweated for. Now here's one. I've only been to Walmart once, and I didn't even go in the store. I was just there to go to a protest demonstration. It was the day after Thanksgiving, and people were protesting that Walmart was having a food drive. Now, why would you protest the food drive? Because the food drive was for the full-time employees of Walmart who were not being paid enough to feed their families. I saw a retail worker standing all day on her feet, and I heard the check they pay her doesn't buy enough to eat. But the banks are made of marble with a guard at every door, and the vaults are stuffed with that the workers sweated for.
Very nice, very nice. James, what were some of his influences, musical and otherwise?
Well, like I mentioned before, his father, he was close with his father. His father was one of the founders of the field of ethnomusicology.
That's right, he was a professor.
He was a professor, and his father was also a professionally trained musician, had been a conductor for a while. So it was from his father. He also got some politics from his father. But also musically, Woody Guthrie, Leadbelly, the people he knew personally who, from whom he learned a great deal.
Let's do one more song.
Yeah.
Somos el Barco?
Somos el Barco.
I'm going to
What a
do this
beautiful
with the guitar.
song. James is going to do
What
a song.
key
with
did we
guitar.
agree on?
I think we said B flat.
Okay.
What a beautiful song this is. You know, I sang this song with some high school kids just 2 days ago.
Huh.
Yeah, over at Piscataway. They have a wonderful program called Piscataway Reads. And they have 776 people participating. Over 400 books have been donated to the cause, and we had a little story and song event, and we sang this song. It's very poetic. It's bilingual, and they sang along.
Somos el barco, somos el mar. Yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. The stream sings it to the river sings it to the sea sings it to the boat that carries you and me. Somos el barco, somos el mar, yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. The boat we are sailing in was built by many hands. The sea we are sailing on touches every sand. Somos el barco, somos el mar. Navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. So with our hopes we raise the sails to sail the seas once more. With our hearts we chart the course never sailed before. Somos el barco, somos el mar, yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the boat, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for that heartfelt tribute to Pete Seeger.
Thank you so much for having us, Ray. Thank you for sharing the word.
Thank you.
If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out warning, I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters.